We begin tonight with the unlikely reality that more than 16 years after his death, Harry Caray is still making news. Moreover, we have fresh documented evidence explaining the great contradiction of Harry Caray's career. That he was one of the great and most beloved figures in sports media history, despite often not really being much of a nuts and bolts announcer and not often being anything of a journalist. The explanation is simple. Harry bought drinks for everybody. I don't mean this metaphorically. Harry Caray's restaurant has found some of Harry's diaries from the early 1970s. They detail what the great baseball man, who was with the White Sox then, did in 1971, 1972, and 1974. And what he did was buy drinks for everybody and write it all down to the penny. From the diaries, January 1st, 1972, Harry Caray spent $10.30 at a Chicago bar called the Back Room on Rush Street. Then he went to 20 East Delaware and dropped another $9.97, then $10 at a place called Sully's, and finally $8.95 at Pepe's. That's $39.22 on drinks in one night, in a time when, as the Chicago Sun-Times notes, a six-pack of the ever-popular old-style beer cost $1.29. Each day in the 1972 diary is carefully filled which bar, with whom, how much. There appears to be a day off on January 16th. The entry in the diary reads only Super. January 16th was the date of Super Bowl VI in New Orleans. Harry appears to have been there. Somebody else appears to have paid. And then there follows a diary entry with an exact dollar amount for Harry Caray's bar tabs for each day from January 17th, 1972 through November 2nd, 1972. 291 consecutive days of the movable liquid feast that was the life of Harry Caray. My friend Grant DePorter, CEO of the Harry Caray restaurants, who sent us the diary images, has drilled even deeper into some of them. In 72, 70 trips to Sully's, 52 to the Key Club, 32 to Butch McGuire's, 7 to Playboy. All told, in 1972, Harry Caray made 1,242 different stops at bars. And he was cutting back. The 1971 diary shows he made 1,362 of them. Why did he do this? Why did he record all this? For posterity? So that a day would come, this day, when the minutia of his prolific procurement of potables would spill down upon us like dust from a medieval book? Hell no. The answer is perfect and perfectly Harry, as DePorter told the Sun-Times. Remember, you used to be able to deduct a 3-martini lunch. This isn't some boast from beyond the grave. I came, I saw, I drank. This is Harry Caray's evidence for his tax deductions for entertainment, his get-out-of-jail-free card in case he was ever audited. So all those he bought drinks for, they're also in the book by name. Wilt Chamberlain, Ted Williams, Gale Sayers, Jack Dempsey, Ernie Banks, Irv Kupcinet, Dick Enberg, the owner of the White Sox, the owner of the A's, the publisher of New York Magazine, Frank Gifford, Johnny Bench, Brent Musburger, You Are Looking Live, and Jack Benny, for crying out loud. Like Casanova's lists of lovers. Day after day, 354 out of the days in the 1972 calendar alone. Neil Steinberg, the Sun-Times columnist who first brought this wonderful artifact to public attention, and I think the Harry Caray diaries are up there with Lincoln's drafts of the Gettysburg Address and the Dead Sea Scrolls. He has failed us only in one area. Steinberg did not get out a calculator and figure out the total Harry spent on drinks in 1972. But if the average per day was just half of what he spent on New Year's Day, it would have turned out to be $6,961. Remember, it's 1972. That six-pack costs $1.29. $6,961 buys you a lot of beer. 32,000 cans of beer. We have no idea how to place 1972 in the historical context of Harry Caray's tab picking up. He began broadcasting baseball in St. Louis in 1945, was fired in 1969. They told him on the phone while he was at, where else? A bar. He switched to Oakland in 1970, the White Sox in 71, the Cubs in 82. He did his last game in September 1997, and then he collapsed on Valentine's Day 1998 while with his wife at, where else? A California restaurant. He did 53 seasons in the booth, most of them when drinking was not merely intertwined with the game, it owned the game. This famous shot of Harry behind the Cardinals' mic in 1951, can you read that? Who do you think the Grease-a-Dick brothers were? Auto mechanics? They made beer. Their name was on the microphone. Beer and liquor were baseball In the days of the tax-deductible hoisting of a few brews or drinks or snifters, how much did Harry Caray spend on drinks for other people over 53 seasons? No man can say. But I can say this, he spent $3 buying me one. Like everybody else in broadcasting in the second half of the 20th century, I had the privilege of meeting Harry Caray. This was in 1988 at spring training in Palm Springs, California. Harry lived there in the winter, and before a Cubs-Angels game, he sidled up to me, and as if I hadn't seen him coming from the other side of the ballpark, he introduced himself. Turned out he was a viewer. He watched me on the local news in L.A. He then introduced me to everybody on the field, all the players, everybody, even when he had to call Ryan Sandberg Scott Sanderson, and even when he called Jim Sundberg Jim Sandbag. And then he said, "Hey, Keith, let's get a beer before the game starts." So since I heard about this Sun Times story about Harry's impeccable record keeping, I've been hoping for one thing, that somewhere there is a Harry Caray drinks purchased diary for the year 1988. And I hope my name is in it. My name. Keith Olberding, Oberholzer, Oberkfell.